What's going on, motherfuckers? Weekly recap video. What a fucking week. What a day today. Everything today. Market wide. Green across the board. SPY. New 52-week high today. Pushing 460 resistance. AMC green. GameStop green. The rest of the meme basket green. Gold pushing all-time highs. Silver macro breakout. Everything is primed and ready to go. The market is about to level up once again. Let's jump into the video, starting with the S&P 500. And this is bittersweet because, I've been tracking the symmetry here for a very long time now, pretty much since the beginning of the year, 2023. And the symmetry has now come to a conclusion. It's time to retire the symmetry chart on S&P 500. This is now done. But I will touch on it one final time today. I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but we have now broken this resistance here at 458. The symmetrical equivalent over here, we broke it. I was mentioning in my last video, potentially we'd be pulling back to 420 before climbing to all-time highs. There was also another scenario where SPY just continued to the upside here and continued to climb to all-time highs. And it looks like the latter is the case. It looks like SPY is going to continue climbing here to all-time highs. As a matter of fact, I'm looking for a gap up Monday on S&P 500. So pretty much bottom line here is the symmetry is done. As I'm speaking, SPY is pushing intraday highs after hours right now. But the symmetry on SPY is done, is pretty much the point here. What a fucking day today. Let's move on from that. Now, there's only two levels of resistance above us currently. And, this is all-time highs on S&P 500 right here. The bottoming formation, perfectly symmetrical move here. And now pushing this macro resistance, 460. Breaking above this trend here in green at 460. This is the only price action above that trend. And this is all-time highs that we previously saw on SPY in January 2022. Now, there really isn't much price action up here, and with that being said, there's not much resistance either. So there are two levels to be looking out for now. First one is 464, and the second is roughly 471. So I'm looking for a gap up on SPY Monday. And we're more than likely going to be heading for 470 next. So a continuation to the upside here to 470. Potentially you then pull back to 460 to test on the breakout of this green trend. Very macro resistance here at 460. So breakout, head up towards 470, hit that resistance here, reject, pull back, bounce off 460 as support, and then all-time highs it is. I mentioned in my last video, and I'll really quickly mention it again, that S&P 500 saw all-time highs in January of 2022, and it is now again lining up for all-time highs in January 2024. So that is pretty much it for SPY, other than the fact that I also mentioned multiple times that, from the beginning of my channel, that SPY would be seeing new all-time highs. And more likely than not, when that happens, AMC, GameStop, the rest of the meme basket will be seeing all-time highs as well. So this looks absolutely perfect. Let's move on to AMC. Starting with the macro perspective, as always, all the usual shit here. So your first and second peaks here, your January, June equivalent peaks that you see here. January, June equivalent, the V-shape and the macro break, the V-shape, the macro break, and then the downtrend, green, red, blue. Green, red, blue, and then the flat portion. And this trend, this macro resistance trend in the downtrend, is the exact same trend on both sides. In both cycles of AMC, your bull cycle and then your bear cycle. Here's the descending resistance, break out of it, bull cycle, and then a bear cycle once again, the same descending resistance, and all of the levels here are pretty much matching up perfectly, which takes you all the way down to your flat portion, which is pretty much right above zero, where you play out the flat portion, you break your macro resistance in white, and that leads you into a new bull cycle. The present case, when we break this trend, we'll be heading for the 3618 fib of $1,400. One more thing before I move on from this. The previous cycle of AMC the downtrend, when it reset into the flat portion, it pretty much reset right at the new year. So January 2020, flat portion begins. January 2021, flat portion concludes, reset into a bull cycle, a squeeze. And in the current cycle, the flat portion beginning in January 2023 and is now looking like it's going to be coming to a conclusion January 2024. So that's very interesting. Moving on from that, I keep checking my phone to see if SPY forms a new high on the day. Moving on from that, the downtrend of AMC. So now we're going to be looking at this trend. It's a very important trend line. It's the most important trend line on AMC. This white trend line that you see here and this one right here, the current cycle. This is the most important trend line on AMC right here. So we're going to be doing a side-by-side now of the previous cycle downtrend versus the current cycle downtrend. So that's what the next slide is. And here it is. And I have one indicator here, the 200 EMA in yellow. So I really quickly want to go over this because all of the touch points here are perfect. So you can't see it, but your macro break is right above the screen here on both sides where you drop down from all-time highs and then you get into the downtrend. So you find your first bottom, crossing the 200 EMA, and then you find your resistance. So the equivalent would be right here. You find your first bottom, crossing the 200 EMA, finding your resistance, and then coming down again, and then back up to the resistance, you cross it again. Same thing here, coming down again, back up to the resistance, crossing it again. And then this would be the blue box where you don't cross the 200 to the upside until you get to the flat portion where you have your 1, 2, 3 peaks. And then over here, 1, 2, 3 peaks, you poke right above the 200 EMA. Then you get into the U move, which again, you break above the 200 EMA. Also break the descending resistance, it's a fake out. And then over here, same thing, the U move, breaking above the 200 EMA, breaking above the resistance, it's a fake out, knifing back through that, and then coming down to your second and third bottoms. So your second and third bottom. The third bottom is your all-time low landmark, from which you form an uptrend, you break your resistance, and you squeeze to the 3618 Fibonacci. That's 3618 fib. I think that's it for this. Moving on from that to the flat portion now. So zooming in even more, the downtrend here. Now we're looking at the flat portion versus the flat portion of the current. So zooming into that, and here it is. And really quickly, I'll go over this again. Dropping down to your first bottom, very choppy, gap up, 3 peaks. Dropping down to your first bottom, very choppy, gap up, 3 peaks. Getting into the U move now, which has a higher high on the right. And over here, same thing, a higher high on the right. That's your fake out of the descending resistance on both sides. And then knifing back into the resistance to come down to your second and third bottom. And also, I forgot to mention this, so really quickly I'll mention it again here, that this trend line, I said it in my past 2 videos, I'm saying it again, this trend line is not the same as this one. It is the same, but it's not in the sense that we've been halted every time we've touched this trend. So halted in March, halted in August, a couple more halts in here, and then halted in July. And we're meeting this trend again roughly end of December, early January. More than likely we'll be meeting it sooner because we'll be uptrending into it. So we're not going to make it to this point right here. We're going to probably hit it somewhere middle of December, end of December. And that's pretty much it for that. So now I went over the flat portion. We're going to be getting into the final iteration of AMC. So the final W here with the tri-peak, this is where you're dropping down from that fake out. So the equivalent over here is the July move. The fake out of the resistance, drop down to your second and third bottom. So now zooming in on that. And here it is. So you can't see the breakout over here on the right side, but it's the same thing. The fake out over here, falling back through it. You get this little cup on the side that you see here. Coming to your second bottom. This was also an all-time low for AMC at the time. This was an all-time low. As this was at the time, this was an all-time low in September. Into the tri-peak, and then your third bottom is a new all-time low, and our third bottom was a new all-time low. When the third bottom all-time low is in, you form an uptrend, and that uptrend takes you directly to the top. So again, when the third bottom is in, you form an uptrend and it takes you into the squeeze. There's no pulling back. It's uptrend into the squeeze. And that is what we're going to be looking for now as we approach the macro resistance of AMC, our macro halt line, closer and closer to it every single day. One more candle every single day, getting closer and closer to this trend. So it doesn't look like much here, but this is an uptrend. This was your all-time low candle right here, and now forming some higher highs. That's a higher low, another higher high, another higher low. Doesn't look like much, but this is an uptrend, and I do not expect to find a new low. I'm not saying it's impossible to form a new all-time low. I'm saying it's very unlikely, and if we do, it's not going to be much. It'll be 20, 30 cents maximum if we do find a new all-time low. We're not going to fucking $4, clown world we live in. We're not going to $4. We're not going to $5. In the worst case scenario of forming a new all-time low, it would probably be somewhere around 630 to 640. And I don't even think we're going to. I think the bottom's in here and we'll now be uptrending into our squeeze, especially with the price action we saw today on S&P 500. Super fucking bullish. But this looks great. And again, the tri-peak looks different here because we were never coming back up to this macro trend. Our halt line, we were never going to come back up to that. It was not the same trend back here in 2021 as it is now. But the next time that we do come back up to this trend, and like I mentioned multiple times, more than likely, this will play out as a very symmetrical move here, a W coming back up to this trend. When we do meet this trend again, we will gap up and things are going to get very volatile and very vertical. And it will be an uptrend to my price target of $1,400, potentially even higher. That's that. All right, really quickly, indicators. So this is once again the weekly perspective of AMC. So we have volume down here on the bottom. Once again, the current macro we're going through right now started January 2021 in the squeeze. From that was all-time high volume. Volume has been descending this whole entire time until the end of the macro, which is where we are now. It's also the breakout of the Fibonacci spiral. So the breakout, the retest, volume picks up. It's sitting at all-time high levels. Retest and our third bottom all-time low. And it's very similar. If you look here, your second bottom, bounce up, third bottom all-time low. Second bottom, bounce up, third bottom all-time low. This week was red, once again, pretty much a doji, so not really red, pretty much flat, and a higher low on the weekly candle. Volume picking up a little bit here. This looks good. OBV still pulling back here, 4 red weeks in a row, looking for a bounce on the OBV. And RSI on the weekly is still oversold, sitting at about 29. RSI has been oversold since July. So roughly 5 months here oversold. Could not ask for a better setup. This looks amazing. So moving on from that, getting into GameStop now. So GameStop's macro, I mentioned this in my last video. Oh my God, the siren is fucking killing me right now. Very annoying. GameStop's macro begins, ends, however you want to call it, with an all-time low landmark, which you see here, right off IPO, all-time low landmark, the squeeze, quote-unquote squeeze, the bull cycle of GameStop, the V-shape, your 1-2, and then your downtrend, very curved, to your, once again, your all-time low landmark, which you V out of, and then into another bull cycle, a squeeze, all-time high. The V-shape was instant, your 1-2, and a very curved macro to the downside again, until you get to your all-time low landmark, which I mentioned multiple times. When GameStop sees its all-time low landmark, it's going to V out of it very fast. It looks about right. That looks about right to me. What a fucking week for GameStop. This looks absolutely amazing. AMC GameStop will be squeezing at the exact same time. Zooming in a little bit more on the daily, this breakout, showed this in my last video really quickly. I'll show it again. GameStop was in a downtrend since early June. June 3rd, I believe, was the peak here. Has been trending down for the past 6 months here on pretty much all-time low volume. And this is all the way back to IPO. This is pretty much all-time low volume on GameStop here. In the past 6 months in this downtrend, breakout here on volume, gap up, huge increase in volume here. Huge change in behavior of the volume profile here. 60 million on this candle, where the daily average was roughly 3 million. This looks amazing. It's possible we fill this gap here. I don't think it's likely though. I don't think we're filling this gap. There will be gaps left open heading into a new macro like the previous one that we saw. There were open gaps at the all-time low of the 2021 cycle when we squeezed. There's going to be open gaps again. As we are entering a new bull cycle, there will be gaps left open to the downside that will be filled at a later time. So that's that. All right, really quickly getting into ticker BKKT. Becky, what a fucking day. I mentioned this in my last video. This is the play that I was talking about for the past couple weeks. Been playing it pretty much since $1. 25% in the green today. Retest confirmed on the macro resistance here in white. Looking for big upside here. I'm not going to really get into the micro tracking of this, but this macro ends pretty much at $2. We closed like 191 today. So another ticker that is ready to fucking straight line here, BKKT. This looks amazing. Breakout of the macro resistance, retest, bounce off, 25% in the green today. This looks amazing. I think that's 6 closes now in a row over the 200 EMA on the daily, which this stock has not seen any closes over the 200 EMA on the daily besides right here at all-time highs. So this looks amazing. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that gold is $10 off all-time highs right now, and at the same time, silver broke out of the triangle right here. That's a new monthly candle. This is a monthly chart. That's a new monthly candle now. December 1st, broke out of the triangle. I've been mentioning this for months on silver's macro. When we break this triangle here, like you saw here, we're looking for a MOAS type move on silver, and this is going to apply to gold as well, which is already pretty much sitting at all-time highs, looking for a essentially a squeeze on precious metals, gold and silver. So this looks great. And then beyond, ticker BYON, 12% on the day. Fucking amazing week here. And another ticker that is ready to straight line to the upside. Everything's labeled here. I don't really feel like going through it, so I'm not going to. SPY is pushing new highs as I'm speaking. That looks amazing. And yeah, I mean, pretty much the point here just being, I'm showing, you know, other tickers here. The market is synced up. The market is fully synced up, and everything, maybe not everything, but most of the market is about to level up in a very big way. And like I said, does not exclude S&P 500. It's right there. This break of 460, that we break this trend, we are seeing all-time highs on SPY. On SPX. Break 460, we will be seeing all-time highs, and we're going to break this. More than likely, we're going to gap over it on Monday. So that is pretty much it for the video. Next week, expectations. We could see macro breaks next week, as early as next week. I'm not saying for certain that we're seeing macro breaks next week. Like I said in my last video, this can happen at any moment. You know, it potentially we have to climb up to this trend. I don't think we even have to. We could just gap over this trend. You know, we don't have to climb slowly all the way up to it and then break it and gap up. We could come to a point here in this uptrend where it just breaks before you even break the trend. So this could happen at legitimately any moment. And I'm not even ruling out Monday next week. As crazy as that sounds, I'm not saying that we're gapping up and squeezing next Monday, but if we do see a gap up on AMC, a significant gap up, $1, $2 gap up, it's pretty safe to say that it's time to fucking go. It is time to go. This is where we are. Like I said, if we go dead flat here, we meet the macro resistance January 3rd, if we're just dead flat. But more than likely, we'll be uptrending into it, as SPY is uptrending to all-time highs as well. And when we do get close enough to this trend, we will gap over it and straight line to the fucking moon. All right, so with that being said, that is everything I wanted to cover for the video. I'm expecting green next week on AMC, 100%. I would bet my life on it. AMC will be green next week. And that is pretty much it. Catch you guys with some updates next week. Enjoy your weekend. And yeah, that's it.